Among the many regrets from the Jimmy Butler era were several players that the Heat failed to acquire via trade. So we'll draft each missed opportunity before delving into the top 10 players in Heat history on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you are following us on your podcast app. Have a very fun show for you today. We're going to ask ChatGPT about the greatest Heat players of all time. But first, it's Friday, which means it's time for our weekly draft. And this week, we're drafting the players that you wish the Heat would have traded for during the Jimmy Butler era in order to maximize that area, possibly even win a championship. So we got two simple rules before we jump into this thing. Number one, the player actually had to get traded between the window of when Jimmy Butler got here in the summer of 2019 and when he left at the deadline this year. So that player actually had to get traded in order to be eligible. That's rule number one. Rule number two, the timing of when these players were available and were traded and the context around that matters. For instance, would have been great to have Damian Lillard in 2021, but he wasn't available in 2021. He was available in the summer of 2023. Kevin Durant wasn't available in the summer of 2023. He was available at the trade deadline in 2023. So that stuff that might come into play, maybe it doesn't, but all of those things are important. Those are the rules. David, like we did it last time, we'll start with a coin flip. Call it heads or tails.
Tails never fails.
Didn't fail you last time. And it is tails again. You get the first pick. Wow. You're on a roll here. Two weeks in a row.
This is not so easy. I really don't know what direction to go in. And I think that's part of the fun of this exercise is that all these players probably would have helped to a great degree during the respective moments when they were traded. But I'm trying to think like of all the players here. I honestly thought you would wind up with the first pick, so I was already kind of just like expecting to wind up with the second pick. But I think of all the players that were traded during the last 5.5 years of the Jimmy Butler era, the player that I think would have been the best fit for this particular incarnation of the Heat team and their chances of winning the best or the most had they acquired him, I'm going to go with Donovan Mitchell.
It's a good pick. It's a good pick.
So, but that's not the clear consensus for first pick for you?
No, I had somebody else. But, I mean, Donovan Mitchell makes a lot of sense. So he's traded from Utah to Cleveland in 2022. That's the moment you mean, right? Or,
yes,
because that's when he was traded. Obviously, he re-signed with Cleveland this past summer,
sure,
but he wasn't traded. So that doesn't. So you're talking about 2022, that summer when Utah traded him to Cleveland.
Right. And the Heat were just eliminated in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Mm-hmm.
It will go on to have this magical finals run without Tyler Hero, but assuming that Hero probably would have been a significant part of any package to acquire Mitchell in the first place, it didn't really matter. But had you had Mitchell and his kind of, historic postseason production, I feel pretty confident saying that you definitely win a championship in 2023. You might even
so you think you put Donovan Mitchell on the 2023 Heat and they beat the Nuggets in the 2023 championship. That's what you believe that?
So. Absolutely. I think so. Absolutely.
I don't know if Jokic was so good and that team was so good. It's not a 5-game series. I think that series goes 6 or 7 and it's super competitive. But I'm not as sold on them definitely winning that series as you are. I think I think it's closer. I think it gives them a chance, but I'm not sure it's a sure thing.
I mean, remember how anemic their offense just became? Jimmy was hobbled a little bit. Like it was just not quite the series it was supposed to have been. And I think when you get a guy who can go for 50 in the course of a playoff game, and that was the edge that you need. I mean, I think he's toasting Jamal Murray all day long, to be honest with you. So, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Christian Brown, like who on that team was going to stop Donovan Mitchell from getting those points? And if that's the case, then you had Jimmy, Bam, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, etc. like assuming whatever that roster would have looked like after you acquire Donovan Mitchell. And not just that, but I am also looking long term. Like I think that not only would they have 123, I think they would have been competitive in 2024. I don't know that Boston makes the moves they do to get, the guys that they do, and I don't know that they win the championship in 2024. I think you have a player like Mitchell to kind of ascend and reach his peak in Miami alongside Bam Adebayo while Jimmy continues to kind of decline. Maybe he doesn't force his way out.
Yep.
Maybe he understands that, I want a chip here. I'm going to continue to compete for championships here. And he becomes more of that Robin role.
Maybe Miami's more willing to give him the extension if you've got Donovan Mitchell under contract. And the timing of that part of it is interesting too, because Mitchell was up for his new contract the same summer Jimmy Butler was up for an extension this past summer. So you would obviously had you traded for Donovan Mitchell in 2022, you're giving him the max contract that Cleveland gave him this past summer. And then once you do that, you've got Donovan Mitchell in that Batman role. And then I think you just extend Jimmy Butler. And we're not even talking about that. I think it's the right pick now that we're talking about it. Because it opens up that window for a couple of years. You get Donovan Mitchell right in Jimmy Butler's peak playoff Jimmy prime.
Yeah.
And that's the key here. And that's what makes it the better pick than my pick. Now that I have the second pick, I'll go Damian Lillard 2023. And that probably gives you 1 or 2 years there. And frankly, I don't know what Jimmy Butler had left in the tank. We just saw it with Golden State. It didn't seem like a whole lot. So are we talking about a 1-year window, a 2-year window versus the Donovan Mitchell window, which might have been a 2 or a 3-year window? And then if you have Mitchell and you no longer have Jimmy Butler also on the other side of that, it's okay, well, at least we have Donovan Mitchell and Bam Adebayo. And you could start building around those two, whereas Damian Lillard is also aging, as we're seeing in Milwaukee. Now, maybe butterfly effect, maybe he never tears his Achilles if he's in Miami instead of Milwaukee or whatever. But I still think had you come off that 2023 finals loss, figured out a way to get Damian Lillard, I think that team at least goes on a run in 2024. I don't know if they win the championship, but I know they're a heck of a lot better. And I know that, and I think it's probably so. I don't think Jimmy Butler gets traded. I think you've got Damian Lillard in that Batman role and that at least number one scoring role. Jimmy Butler's sort of your anchor, your two-way anchor. Bam Adebayo's anchoring your defense. I just think the team makes a lot of sense. So I'll go Lillard number 2.
It's a great pick. It kind of feels reminiscent of some of the moves that the Celtics made in 2024 to propel them to their championship. Like that was, or 23, I guess that was the year that they did it. But, just to, like, you're there, you feel like you're there, and coming off of the finals run, you fall short. And that was the summer of the Heat. Like nobody had seen what they had been able to do. It was a historic run for them. And I think a lot of people were just really sold on that version of the team. They were as fun a team. Like as much as we're seeing the buzz now about Indiana, I think it was just as high, if not even higher, about that Miami team, because it was just like the zombie Heat. How do they keep doing this? There was just so many different angles for the NBA fan base to look at it, and they just kept winning. And they were playing good basketball too. It wasn't just like they were grifting their way to it or anything like that. They were really, I mean, and with Jimmy playing at such a high level,
Jimmy made the it's weird. Jimmy made the superstar leap at 33, 32, 33 years old. But he was like, that's when he sort of became that household name and started.
Yeah.
Like you just look at commercials before and after.
Yeah.
For Jimmy Butler,
Hotels.com doesn't know who Jimmy Butler is.
Right. He doesn't have the Michelob Ultra ads yet. He doesn't have any of that stuff yet.
Yeah.
Until then. All right. So I think these were the two obvious picks. You probably could have went in any order. I think you were right taking Mitchell number 1. I'm taking Lillard number. This is where the draft to me gets interesting. Do you have your next pick ready?
I'm like kind of flip-flopping between a couple of different players here, but I think I'm gonna go KD.
Yep. I think that's good.
I'm not gonna overthink this one.
Nope. 2023 trade deadline. It's Durant lists Miami and he lists Phoenix. And Matt Ishbia, new owner syndrome, just comes in and says, here's all of it. Here's Bridges. Here's Cam Johnson. Here's the 3 or 4 first-round picks, whatever it was, the swaps, all of it. You just wonder, had Sarver not gotten pushed out of the league, he probably doesn't do all of that. And I wonder if that doesn't happen if Kevin Durant's actually in Miami.
It's a good point. I mean, and just the acquisition, like again, it just feels like they were good. Like everybody kind of forgets this, but they were really good when they acquired KD, and I think it was a really great move for them
The Suns were.
at the time. Yeah, the Suns. I mean,
Yeah.
they wound up going on a little deep playoff run there, and then the expectation was like, well, we'll make more moves, we can do more, etc., to continue to build on this thing. But there was potential there, and the fact that they just fell so short of that is what's really startling about that particular group. Is they just the potential was far from actually realized, and so when you look at KD and then he joins a team like Miami, it's much more fully formed, much more stable, much more capable of maximizing what he's capable of doing, and he would fit alongside Jimmy Butler. He would fit alongside Bam Adebayo.
Yep.
And that being the case, I feel pretty confident that they win that championship.
It would have been a home run, obviously, right? And who knows? Maybe the Heat are able to get Durant this time around. Obviously, no Jimmy Butler anymore.
Finally.
But yeah, the Miami Heat, the best team in the league at not trading for Kevin Durant, but maybe they could buck the trend. All right, it is my pick. We'll get to it at the end of this break. Coming up next on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, you know what time it is. It's playoff season, and that means big performances and even bigger rewards. And DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. You just place an order of $20 or more, and you use the code Wingstop50. That's Wingstop50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms do apply. You ever look at your delivery fees and thought, well, there's got to be a better way? Well, with Dash Pass, you get $0 delivery fees and exclusive perks like this one. How much would you save over the course of a season? I know you probably wind up ordering a lot during a regular season and the playoffs and everything else like that. So many sporting events that always capture your interest. Well, this is one way to watch games and save money. So here's the play. Sign up for Dash Pass and unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 plus in a playoff game, will it be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Who knows? Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day with a code Wingstop50. That's Dash Pass. Your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms do apply, and we'll be right back.
I got the next pick here. I'm going James Harden. This would have been the right play, the right pivot, right after you strike out on Damian Lillard. And I was lobbying for it here. This is not revisionist history. You can go check the receipts. At the start of the 2023-2024 season, I was out here saying, do it. I know he stands for everything that Miami Heat culture does not. I understand the concerns about James Harden in South Beach and the proximity to certain adult entertainment locations. I didn't care. I didn't care because he was going for nothing. Here's what the Clippers ultimately acquired James Harden for. Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nick Batum, KJ Martin, and 2 first-round picks. With a pick swap and a second-round pick in there, or 2 second-round picks in there. You could have probably gotten Harden for Kyle Lowry, Caleb Martin, and 2 first-round picks. You had it. You could have done it. Miami didn't do it. They weren't interested. I don't know why. They were in training camp with Kyle Lowry and Boca Raton talking about how he's the starting point guard after he had gotten benched in that finals run and all these things. They didn't have a point guard. They thought they were getting Damian Lillard, and James Harden is not Damian Lillard. I understand that. James Harden has his flaws. I get it. It's not perfect. It's why he went for so cheap. But given what the price was, and considering that he could have been the ultimate innings eater for this Heat team in the regular season, because the one thing Harden does do, plays a lot of regular season games, puts up a lot of stats in those regular season games. James Harden has never missed the playoffs. That guy just gets his teams to the playoffs. And then once he's in the playoffs, that's when he falls short. But that's what playoff Jimmy is for. And I still think had they traded for Harden, then you're not in the play-in tournament. Kelly Oubre doesn't land on Jimmy Butler's knee. Butler is healthy for that playoffs run. They're not playing the Celtics in the first round. They're probably a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, and who knows what could have happened. So I don't know. You see how good this Clippers team was this year. Imagine that with a year younger James Harden in the Eastern Conference, where the competition isn't like that. I think that could have been in the cards. I think the Heat kind of got a little too high on their own supply in terms of what Heat culture means and blah, 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 blah. I think they should have just traded for James Harden. I think they could have. They didn't do it. They didn't explore it. They should have done it. That, to me, it was an easy number 2 pick.
Yeah, I get it. I just, again, the playoff concerns are something. I think that's pretty legit. But I see your point also that when you have Jimmy, you don't necessarily have to worry about Harden. And who knows, maybe his job is that much easier and he can actually wind up at least contributing, if not thriving during a playoff scenario.
He was okay for the Clippers in this last playoff run. The last game was a stinker, but he was okay.
That's what everybody remembers.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it works, though. Yeah, no, it's a good pick. Again, I mean, there's a lot of ways that it could have benefited Miami, and just again from the idea that he's going to be that term innings eater. You have used it so consistently in describing what Harden provides, and you're absolutely right. Like, we had a conversation just this week about DeMar DeRozan. Again, a guy you're gonna, you know what you're getting from them, and with Harden, it's high production with the occasional flair that's superstar sensational, and that's what he's capable of. He's still at that point in particular.
Look what he's done to maximize Zubac in that pick and roll in LA. Yeah. Imagine him with Bam.
Yeah.
Just a guy you can actually throw an entry pass to Bam Adebayo, throw a lob to Bam. I know I harp on it all along, and I've been harping on the James Harden thing for a while. It's the kind of move that this Heat front office didn't make. Slightly risky.
Yep.
Wasn't perfect, but they were trying to hit a home run without swinging in the bat for almost the entirety of the Jimmy Butler era. They wanted another Jimmy Butler trade where it was like Josh Richardson and a first-round pick and unloading Hassan Whiteside all in one fell swoop and then landing a superstar player, and they were trying to recreate that every single time. Perfect player, low cost. It's why they ended up not getting Damian Lillard, because they misread their hand on that. They ended up not getting Kevin Durant because they didn't go all in. Maybe that was the right move, but that's why you didn't end up with Durant. And it's the exact kind of move that this front office refused to make that they should have made, because who knows? They needed to be a little riskier. They needed to be a little bit more all in than what they were, and they don't have a championship in the Jimmy Butler era to show for it. But you have the next pick.
Yeah, I'm going with Pascal Siakam on this one.
I love this. He's on my list.
Yeah, I think he's just such an underrated player.
Yep.
And he would have fit in so well there. Like, unfortunately, it keeps Bam at the 5, and that's probably not what he would have preferred. But just think of how much he alleviates all the concerns offensively. He's an underrated defender. He's not great, but he can hold his own, certainly. And he's always fit in that kind of category where he's strong enough to take advantage of smaller matchups, and he's big enough to kind of handle his own against big enough to handle the smaller matchups and small enough to go against bigger players that try and guard him. And so I think he's a walking mismatch that always kind of tends in his favor, and he just gets his points and he knows what to do. And I think he would have fit in pretty well here, a guy with championship culture, and you can it would have worked in a lot of levels. And I don't know would they have acquired him? And at that point in time, was that before they moved Lauri? I think it was. I don't know.
I think it was after. Was it after? So he was moved in January of 2024, same month
Lauri
that.
Was moved,
so
yeah.
Let me look, because so Siakam was traded January 17th.
Yeah.
Terry Rozier traded to Miami. Let's Google that really quick. And Rozier was traded January 23rd. So they could have done it before. So maybe the trade that the Pacers did was Bruce Brown's contract and 3 first-round picks. Could you have moved Lowry's contract back to Toronto, ironically enough? Did they have the 3 first-round picks? Maybe. I don't know. Could they have figured it out? Perhaps. Maybe throw some other things in. I don't know.
But it was just a contract concern. So I think that's what everybody was kind of shying away from. Is like, is he going to resign? And we heard a lot of talk about how much money he wanted Toronto, and Toronto didn't balk on that. And then that's why I think a lot of teams were scared off at the time. And he wound up resigning with the Pacers. And look at them; they're one game away from making the NBA Finals.
All NBA forward, man. Like Siakam's awesome, and I think perpetually underrated. And that's the kind of move that the Celtics made, right? That the Heat didn't. And our friend of the show, Ron Nodcarney, is on this a lot, where he's saying like, "Hey, you had your star duo in Bam and Jimmy. It was about filling out the roster with guys who could support them. Imagine a roster that instead of miscasting Caleb Martin at the 4, they had Siakam at the 4. Imagine how much better they would be." And if you and if you just did that across the positions, right? If you found those kinds of players, the Heat were always looking for another superstar, but maybe all along Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo were good enough as long as they had a better supporting cast. And the Heat were just too preoccupied with the top of the roster and not occupied enough with the middle of the roster. And even saying Siakam is a middle of the roster guy is probably a disservice to Siakam. So
absolutely,
I like it. I'm with you. So yeah, I had him on my list, kind of an underrated one. Let's take a quick break here. We're going to get to the rest of the draft. We got to probably move a little bit faster with these. And then ChatGPT has an idea of who the top 5 Heat player or the top 10 Heat players are of all time. I'm going Lauri Markkanen with my next pick. And not when he got traded to Utah, but rather when he was traded to Cleveland. In the offseason of 2021, Cleveland basically got him for a lot of protected first-round pick and salary filler. And it's easy to look at Markkanen now making a max contract and what he's done in that 1 year in Cleveland and a couple of years in Utah. He was an all-star 2 years ago, and say, oh my God, like obviously he'd be a great fit next to Bam Adebayo. He's still in, we were talking about a mock trade the other day that had Markkanen coming to Miami, right? That's sort of this target that Heat fans are always dreaming about. But when he got drafted to Chicago and was kind of bad for them, and Cleveland took a chance on him. Nobody was looking at Markkanen in 2021 the way that they're looking at Markkanen now, or even last year. But had they done that, had they just said, you know what, we trust our scouting, we trust our development, 7-footer who can knock down a 3-pointer, he was still doing that in Chicago. It was just all the other stuff that came with it since then. But could you imagine had they just traded a lottery protected first and some salary filler, a Kelly Olynyk or something like that?
Yeah.
To Chicago for Lauri Markkanen? How that could have changed things for Miami? They would have had the answer at the 4 spot.
Yes.
Since then. Like it wouldn't have changed. They just would have had that. And him next to Bam, next to Jimmy, spacing the floor, it would have been a perfect fit.
My only concern is that I don't know that Markkanen becomes the Markkanen version that we saw here, the borderline all-star and all-star that he was here. Like I think in Miami, I don't know that he would have necessarily thrived to the same degree. I don't know that they would have given him the leeway. They might have broken him because that's just sometimes what happens. And that, I mean, like, I don't think he became particularly skilled from one team to the other, but we saw this transformation, as you said. I mean, in Chicago, he was bad. In Cleveland, he was solid. And then in Utah, he was fantastic. And it's like, I don't know that
he probably isn't an all-star
kind of leap
because he's not getting the touches that he got in Utah. He'd still be a damn good player. Right?
It would have been a good fit. He'd help provide balance to the lineup for sure.
Yeah, exactly. You got the next pick.
We're
going to do 2 more each. We have a starting 5.
I'm going to go OG on this one.
Good one. All the Raptors guys. You wanted all the Raptors guys. Yep, OG traded at that same deadline as Siakam.
Yep. Contract concerns, but same thing. Like, imagine having that all NBA type defender that can handle. I mean, he's in the same mold as Bam in terms of 1 through 5 kind of defense. And he stretches the floor to a high degree, and he can pick up centers if Bam gets in foul trouble. Yep. You can do a lot there with OG.
Would you anyway. So Toronto traded or the Knicks traded RJ Barrett, who was in the Tyler Hero draft. RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. Would you have moved Hero to get Anunoby in retrospect? Because that's what it would have cost.
Yes, I think so. I think so.
I'm not sure on there. But good pick. I'm going to go Derek White. With my next pick. Yeah. Just 2 first-round picks in 2021 to San Antonio to go get Derek White. And Derek White obviously wasn't considered what he was, but he had a lot of fans in the NBA and a lot of fans on NBA Twitter. And I just remember when Boston traded for him, people were like, wow, what a perfect fit. Oh my gosh, people are going to realize who Derek White is and how good he is. So that was another one where Miami didn't want to waste their draft capital because they thought they were preserving it for a superstar. Meanwhile, had they moved a couple of first-round picks and went out and gotten Derek White, it would have been their answer at point guard for the next 4 years. He would have been able to fit next to Tyler Hero. You wouldn't have had to give up Tyler Hero in that trade, more likely than not. It would have been White, Hero, Jimmy, Bam, find your four, whatever. But I think it would have been a good pick. You're next.
I think this might be my best pick. A real sleeper here. Aaron Gordon.
Aaron Gordon. Wow, I didn't even have him on my list. This is a sleeper. When was he traded?
2021.
Okay, in the summer, right? Or was that the deadline?
Let me see. March. So yeah, the deadline. 2021. That was is that the COVID shortened season? Yeah, that's the COVID shortened season. So yeah,
COVID
that's what it was.
Delayed. So that's right.
Yeah.
The deadline was all the way in March. Yep.
Yeah, for along with Gary Clark to Denver for RJ Hampton, Gary Harris, and a first round pick. So very little. Very little. Like Harris was a 3-point shooter, but obviously injured, etc. He wound up never not really playing much of a role in Orlando. But yeah, Gordon's thrived there, and maybe he doesn't become Aaron Gordon alongside without anybody but playing alongside Nikola Jokic. But you know what? I'd like to give him that chance in Miami. I mean, I loved covering him when he was in Orlando. He's a smart guy. He's I think he would have been able to use that incredible athleticism. And he just became a smarter player in Denver, but I think Miami would have coached him up too. There was so much chaos in Orlando. He was never going to succeed there.
Right. He would have been just PJ Tucker on steroids for the entirety of the Jimmy Butler era, right? Again, one of those guys, they just would have had an answer at power forward. Defensively, oh my God. Jimmy, Gordon, Bam, forget about it. Like that's a top 5 defense every single year, right?
Yeah.
With those 3 guys. That's a great pick. All right, I got the last one here. I'm going... Give me Chris Paul. Give me Chris Paul. They circled the wagons on Chris Paul a couple of times. They did it in 2019, right after they acquired Jimmy Butler. I remember being in Las Vegas for Summer League when this was happening, and people were talking about pretty openly, Miami is seriously considering calling the Thunder about Chris Paul. It would have costed them Tyler Hero, who was a rookie, and draft capital and stuff. So maybe that would not have been the right move. So I'm actually thinking about the next season. He spent 1 year in OKC, and then the following summer got traded to Phoenix for basically a first-round pick and salary filler.
They go to the finals.
And then they go to the finals and lose to Milwaukee after taking a 2-1 lead in the finals.
Yeah.
2-0 lead in the finals. I'm not sure why they weren't more why were they not more interested in Chris Paul at that? It was age. I guess that's what it was, but nobody realized that Chris Paul had probably 2.5 really good years left. And had you just gotten Chris Paul in 2020, maybe you make that, maybe that's the team. Maybe he's there instead of Kyle Lowry. Maybe that's just enough in 2022 to put him over the edge, beat Boston in the 2022 Eastern Conference Finals. And then you're playing not the best Warriors team that won a championship. Maybe that's enough to just give him a chance in 2022. So I go Chris Paul there. Honorable mentions, or maybe not even honorable team players that we didn't mention. Drew Holiday. You and I did not mention him. I love Drew Holiday. No. I don't think
the right fit for Miami.
Not the right fit in that moment for Miami. Even though we know that they called Portland about him, but not the right fit. Josh Hart was another guy. Yep. Again,
Kyrie
would have been nice. Kyrie was on my list. Same sort of thing as James Harden. I didn't want to just double up on the same type of thing, really, just for content purposes. But Kyrie could have definitely been drafted by either one of us. Al Horford in 2020.
That whole season I blocked out the fact that he was traded. I totally forgot that he was a Thunder.
The Sixers they attached a first-round pick to him to salary dump him to OKC.
I totally forgot.
The Sixers were actually kind of ahead of their time putting Horford and Embiid together.
Yeah.
They just didn't know how to implement it right. But if you had Horford with Bam, forget it. Like, that would have been pretty crazy. So that was a fun draft. That was a good one. We're going to wrap up today's episode with with this little thing I did, I asked ChatGPT who the 10 greatest Heat players are of all time based on their impact, accomplishments, longevity, and contributions to the franchise's success. So I want you to guess who those 10 players are. Doesn't matter in any order. I just want you to get the 10 players, and then I'll tell you where they come in.
All right. I'm going to go with Dwayne Wade as an easy pick there.
Yep, that's number 1.
Okay. Udonis Haslem.
Udonis Haslem was on the list. He's number 6.
Okay. Bam Adebayo.
Bam's on the list. Where do you think he is?
I would have him 7th.
He's 10, according to ChatGPT.
That's wrong. LeBron James. Yeah.
LeBron's on the list. He's number 2.
Really? Okay. Chris Bosh.
Chris Bosh is number 4.
Shaquille O'Neal.
Shaq's on the list at number 7.
7. Alonzo Mourning.
Number 3.
Alonzo Mourning is 3rd. Is Jimmy Butler on the list?
Jimmy Butler's at 5.
5. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Quick recap of number.
7.
So I want a quick recap of the top 5 players in Heat history according to ChatGPT. Dwayne Wade at number 1, LeBron James at number 2, Alonzo Mourning at number 3, Chris Bosh at number 4, Jimmy Butler at number 5. So you've got 8 and 9 missing.
Yeah. Okay. Tim Hardaway.
Number 8.
Okay. Goran Dragic.
Nope.
I'm missing
Almost a 10 out of 10. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Who's the 9th best player in Heat history?
Give me one more
Is it Glenn
guess.
Rice?
You got this. It's Glenn Rice.
Is it Glenn
yeah.
Rice? Really? Okay. Well, I see. I didn't think they'd count that, but yeah. Okay. Nice.
Yeah. Glenn Rice is older than ChatGPT, but they went back in the archives and figured it out. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. We are starting our Blue Notebook series of scouting reports next week. So be on the lookout for that. Also, leave us notes in the comments section. Reach out to us in the Locked On Heat Insider community with the subtext link in the show notes. If there are players that you have your eye on, let us know because we can use any kind of direction. The Heat have the 20th pick in the draft, so hard to know who's going to be available, who won't be available. But if there's somebody you want us specifically to scout, please let us know somehow. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.